So today it's about synthesizing snare sounds, rimshot sounds inside of the grid with an easy setup for drum, bass, dubstep and so on. It's a nice setup I use all the time lately instead of using eSnare. So I want to show you how it works. Here we use the pulley grid on an empty track. Also the track itself is armed, so we can use the MIDI keyboard. And the grid itself is in mono mode, of course. And we use for the oscillator, we use the pulse oscillator. And the reason for that is because the pulse gives us a lot of overtones already. So when you use the spectrum, you can see we have the fundamental pitch and then a lot of overtones. We don't need to use in the post-FX distortion that much because it's already baked in, right? Instead of using maybe a sine where we have only one sine partial and then you can't filter anything because there is nothing in there, and then you have to use distortion to create overtones and then you filter the overtones away and so on. So I start here with the pulse. Okay, that's the main thing about this. We don't need the pre-chord because we don't want to change the pitch with the keyboard or with the piano roll. And we use hertz to frequency conversion here and pull this all the way up. And we use a constant, so we can type in the frequency. In our case here, it's maybe 150 or 160 hertz, something like this for a snare sound, for deep snare sound. We use here an AD as an envelope. We need the pre-chord here actually to trigger it. And we go into the output here and it sounds like this. Kind of like an C64 snare sound. But yeah, EQ5 in the post-FX, so we can actually analyze here the signal a bit. You can see we have the root, the fundamental, and we have a bit of overtones, or actually all the overtones. And now comes the idea. When you change here the sync, it's actually not changing the pitch. It's changing the pitch of the waveform. The oscillator itself stays on the pitch. So we can kind of create two partials at the same time, or we can amplify two partials at the same time. And I'll show you this here when we add the filter. I'm using the Moog one, the low pass MG. Also disable here the pre-chord for the pitch. Pull this down. And we also take here the shape output of the AD and put this here into the frequency modulation input. So you already get a nice snare sound with this. Yeah, that's better. So now when we change here the sync a bit, you can hear it almost sounds like we amplify here the second harmonic, this one here. We still have the root pitch in here, but sometimes the root pitch goes completely away dependent on the position of the sync here. Of course, if you go here to exact values, like 24, it sounds like you just pitch the frequency up, right? But in between, it's basically kind of the same idea I did with the formants, with the scroll in some of my recent videos, where we have an incomplete kind of pinched waveform inside of one cycle for the current pitch. So this is the main idea for creating basically the root snare sound. Of course, we need here maybe also a bit of noise on top and a segment here for the noise filtering, because we want to have here a more like interesting shape for the noise. So let's go this. So we need a loud burst in the beginning. That's how I like it, at least. And then a slow fade out. We go here also to seconds. We use, no, we don't need this. We use here a mixer and mix the noise with the output here of our pulse oscillator, and then we go into the output, right? like this. So, and then you can change basically the fade out of the noise, the speed knob. You can make it stereo, like this. And then in the end, in the After FX box here, we can use a hard clip or maybe a bit 8, which features, of course, a hard clip here. Hard clip. And we pull the clock all the way up, mixes all the way up, and we can also here use dither and diffusion to add a bit of spice on top. It sounds like this, like a normally nice drum bass snare sound, right? And then you can start to modify it with all these knobs you already have here, and also the EQ. The EQ is pretty important actually for the sound, as you can imagine. So when we cut here everything below 1K and start to push here 1K and then use sync, at some positions you get some kind of rimshot-y sounds. Right? Sounds like a rimshot to me, at least. And it's pretty nice for drum bass sometimes when you make these liquid roller drums. Then for that, it's pretty nice to use. Also, if you want to have more like these deep snare sounds, you can amplify here the root frequency, make the top noise layer a bit longer. Maybe a high pass here inside of this. So you can imagine that all these knobs, just play around with this and find a sweet spot for your kind of preferred snare sound or what fits actually your current song or track. But there are so many options just with these knobs you have in here. And if you think you need more kind of wideness, you can also switch the oscillator into stereo mode and then just slightly detune the left and the right channel. That's too much here, maybe. But just a bit. Just to get a bit of wideness instead of, you know, using a reverb or maybe something like this. So it's pretty dry, a dry sound, and pretty defined and focused on certain frequency here with the EQs. And we don't even use here some kind of pitch modulation at all. It's just a pure static pitch. I mean, you can try it out to bring in here a bit of pitch modulation by using an add module, and then maybe use a second AD here, and then we go in here and maybe an attenuate to change the strength. That gives also kind of a different sound. Maybe that's too long. Yeah, it really depends on what kind of sound you're going for. And then more clip. Maybe mix it in with a dry signal. It's also a good idea. And maybe at the end, a bit of convolution. And then use a small room. Let's see. Real rooms. Wooden attic. It's always nice. So it sounds like you have a real drum set inside of a room. But this is kind of my setup for snare sounds lately, for drum bass at least, and dubstep and so on, to have a clean, precise, focused sound for rim shots, these clap rim shot sounds, or these deep drum bass sounds. And also, of course, for dubstep, it's also nice. So it's a pretty easy, simple setup, and you don't even need to use here pitch modulation if you don't want to. Just the main idea is using a pulse, using your sync and pulse width, and then use a white noise on top, of course, and in the post FX use an EQ5 to shape to your liking, and then go and drive everything into a distortion device. If it's bit 8 or distortion or maybe a hard clip or whatever you want to use, doesn't matter. It all shapes the sounds in a different way, and then maybe use your convolution to bring in a bit of roominess or whiteness or something like that, right? So this is the main idea for stuff like this, and that's also this video. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you liked the video, subscribe to the channel, ask me the questions in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and bye.